All right, guys, today we are going to be reacting to even the United States stunned by Europe's secret World War III plan. Thank you so much for the support, guys. We're going to simply jump in here and see what's going on. Let's jump in.
Already been simmering with
Make
a
sure
host
you
of smaller
subscribe, guys.
conflicts and tensions for years, but everyone was too caught up in daily life to see the bigger picture. Let's fast forward to 2025. You've probably heard the old story about the frog in boiling water. Drop it in suddenly and it jumps right out. But heat the water slowly and it never realizes the danger until it's too late. Right now, the West might be that frog. As we scroll past the headlines, Russia inching into neighboring countries, cyber attacks shutting down power grids, troops massing along NATO borders, it all seems like background noise. But zoom out and it starts to look like history repeating itself, and not the good kind. To make matters worse, Europe's long-standing safety net, the United States, is starting to fray. Once reliable transatlantic partnerships are straining to a breaking point. Washington is questioning NATO's relevance and stepping back from global commitments. And for the first time in decades, European leaders may need to defend itself without its most powerful ally. This isn't a momentary shift, it's a warning, a fundamental change in how the continent thinks about war, peace, and survival. To understand how Europe is responding to the growing threat of war, we need to first understand what it's facing. The battlefield has shifted, not just in geography, but in form. Russia, for one, isn't playing by the old rules of war. They've gone full multi-dimensional chess. In recent decades along NATO's eastern borders, they've positioned over 30,000 troops near the Suwalki Gap. The narrow corridor
That's crazy. I never realized that. See, look at this, guys. Damn, man. No wonder Lithuania is in Latvia. They're like, bro, we need to lock in, man. This is, man, right. When you put this into perspective, oh, this is
connecting Poland and Lithuania, making the Baltic states perpetually nervous. Previous to the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, their massive Zapad military exercises simulated capturing Baltic capitals in under 60 hours. It's not exactly subtle, but conventional tanks and troops are just the visible tip of the iceberg. Back in 2007, Russia's cyber units took down Estonia's digital infrastructure, and it regularly probes European power grids, banking systems, and government networks. The 2022 attack that disabled Ukraine's satellite communications right before the invasion was straight out of their standard playbook now. Some Europeans may remember winters when they couldn't afford to heat their apartment. Well, they can thank Russia's energy games. Before the Ukraine war exposed the vulnerability of this controversial energy source, Russia controlled 40% of Europe's natural gas supply, and it wasn't shy about turning the taps on and off for political leverage. Germany's rushed construction of LNG terminals wasn't just about going green, it was about survival. While everyone watched Russia, China quietly became Europe's landlord. They owned significant stakes in 14 major European ports, including Greece's Piraeus, Germany's Hamburg terminal, and key Italian shipping hubs. When a Chinese company buys your local port, it's not just business, it's Beijing gaining a strategic foothold. The tech situation is even more concerning. European universities and tech firms have hemorrhaged critical knowledge to Chinese partners. That advanced AI research from German universities, those semiconductor designs from Dutch labs, they often end up in Chinese military applications faster than European countries can say export controls. Meanwhile, China's military isn't just staying in Asia anymore. Their navy conducts joint exercises with Russia in the Baltic Sea. Chinese, quote, research vessels monitor NATO operations in the Mediterranean. Their global surveillance network can track European military movements from space. While Europe sees China as a trade partner, Beijing sees Europe as the soft underbelly of Western power, a region ripe for influence, investment, and subtle disruption.
damn, man.
China is playing the long game, building leverage points without firing a shot. In another trend that ominously echoes how events played out in the 1920s and 1930s, gone are the days when international agreements actually meant something. The Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, or INF Treaty, is dead. The Open Skies Treaty that allowed verification flights over military facilities have been abandoned, and the START nuclear treaty is on life support. We're reverting to a world where military might trumps legal agreements. The institutions designed to prevent another war are themselves on the brink. The UN Security Council is paralyzed by Russian and Chinese vetoes and an increasingly unpredictable United States. The World Trade Organization can't resolve trade disputes. Even NATO faces
that is a
internal
good
fractures
point here, right here.
Trade Organization can't resolve trade disputes.
They never can. You know what? The crazy is that a lot of these countries, right? Damn, yeah, because at the end of the day, you want to really deal with trades unless you have force behind it. It means nothing. A lot of these documents, when you really start understanding law, countries, all these things are very subjective and abstract, right? The concept of government and law is abstract. What really makes it real is the concept of force, or called the force doctrine. None of these organizations make anything if there's not a force. If there's no force behind it. If there's no force behind it, it means nothing. It means nothing, guys. This is why this is not doing anything, because there's no force.
Even NATO faces internal fractures over defense spending priorities. When Turkey can block Swedish membership for years and Hungary regularly sides with Russia, the mutual defense guarantee, NATO's core promise, looks increasingly shaky. This isn't the Cold War with clear sides and rules. It's a brewing free-for-all where aggressors exploit every vulnerability, all while deliberately staying just below the threshold of open conflict. Europe isn't a monolith. It's a patchwork of histories, geographies, and defense priorities. And while the threats may be continent-wide, the responses are deeply regional. From the icy Arctic to the sun-baked Mediterranean, every corner of Europe is gearing up in its own way. Some are digging trenches, others are dusting off old doctrines, reviving conscription, or building next-gen cyber units. To understand how Europe is preparing for what could become the unthinkable, we need to zoom in, region by region. Let's start with the Eastern Front. No region feels the Russian threat more acutely than those countries living in the shadow of past occupations. Poland isn't just building an army, it's assembling a fortress. By 2040, it aims to have the largest land army in Europe, with over 300,000 active personnel and a defense budget exceeding 4% of GDP. It's buying hundreds of tanks, HIMARS systems, F-35s, Apache helicopters from both the US and South Korean suppliers. Warsaw is preparing not for a war, but the war.
Wow.
The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania.
So it seems like Poland and Germany are the only two countries that are really taking this very serious. Right? They're taking this very serious. Unless a lot of the other countries step up to the plate, I cannot see. Think about it, guys. If I don't see anything, if we don't see any increase of budget in defense in a lot of these countries, NATO might be a little weaker than we thought, or we think.
Embraced a total defense model, blending civilian resilience with rapid mobilization. Their small size is their strength. They can shift gears fast, mobilize reserves, and activate national defense leagues within hours. School children learn first aid. Citizens know how to defend infrastructure, and in a crisis, every laptop and rifle counts. Romania and Bulgaria, long underestimated in NATO, are reinforcing their Black Sea defenses amid growing Russian naval activity. Romania is hosting more U.S. troops than ever before and investing heavily in F-16s, missile defense, and naval modernization. Bulgaria, though slower to act, is finally awaking to the strategic urgency of its coastline and energy infrastructure. The North has always taken security seriously. Cold, remote, and rich in resources, it's a place where strategic depth matters. Now it's preparing like never before. Finland, still fresh-faced at NATO, brings not just commitment but a national defense blueprint envied across Europe. With universal male conscription, a large trained reserve, and a deeply embedded culture of resilience, every Finnish family knows where the nearest shelter is. Sweden, after decades of neutrality, has made a hard pivot back to defense. Following Finland's example and becoming NATO's newest member in 2024, it's rebuilding its coastal defenses, modernizing its air force, and reinstating civil defense training. Sweden's legendary warfare state is now training citizens, not just to care, but to fight. And Norway keeps its eyes peeled at Earth's highest latitudes. Its Arctic strategy involves defending vital shipping lanes and monitoring Russian military activity across the Barents Sea. With advanced submarines and joint U.S. exercises in the high north, Norway is a silent sentinel guarding NATO's icy frontier. For decades, Western Europe basked in the peace dividend. Now the bill is due, and a rearmament revolution is underway.
Damn.
Germany's Zeitenwende, or turning point, is more than a political slogan. It marks a seismic cultural shift. After decades of underspending and strategic ambiguity, Berlin has pledged 100 billion euros in new defense investments, rebooted its domestic arms industry, and started the slow march toward military credibility. France.
And this, I think, the step of Germany investing more money to their military defense, it does give some kind of confidence to Europe. Yeah, they give some confidence to Europe. I think hopefully this will be a threat that's going to be taken serious, meaning from the perspective of defending themselves against enemy attack. That could be China or Russia.
Never let go of its martial instincts. As Europe's only nuclear power besides the UK, Paris is quietly upgrading its sea and air-based deterrence while flexing its expeditionary muscle in the Sahel, the Indo-Pacific, and Eastern Europe. France wants to lead, and it's willing to fight to prove it. The United Kingdom, post-Brexit, is positioning itself as NATO's premier naval power. The integrated review reset its priorities toward the Indo-Pacific, but the war in Ukraine recentered Europe. Now the UK is balancing both, deploying strike groups, bolstering cyber units, and investing in next-gen submarines and stealth fighters. Southern Europe has long juggled economic strain, regional instability, and proximity to volatile neighbors. Now it's recalibrating defense policy to meet growing threats from both East and South. Italy is doubling down on defense industry modernization. Leonardo, its defense giant, is supplying high-end tech across NATO. Rome is walking a tightrope, honoring its NATO commitments while stepping up as a leader in Europe's defense future. It's investing in drone warfare and pushing for stronger interoperability across European allies. Once focused inward as NATO's lowest spender, Spain is slowly ramping up its defense spending and procurement. The country's investing in cyber defense, naval upgrades, and enhanced readiness forces, all while contributing to NATO missions in the Baltics and Africa. Greece, wedged between multiple fault lines, has always lived with a heightened sense of threat. Turkish tensions, refugee flows, and energy disputes in the eastern Mediterranean have prompted Athens to sign multiple defense pacts, including a landmark deal with France. It also has bought Rafale fighters, frigates, and drones. Greece isn't just reacting, it's preparing, pledging as proof to spend 25 billion euros over the next decade. Everyone knows that national efforts can only go so far. A Russian missile won't stop at the border, and a cyber attack won't politely knock before spreading across a continent. And that's why individual preparedness, while essential, isn't enough. European security depends not just on national arsenals, but on the ability to act together, seamlessly, rapidly, and decisively. From revamped NATO commitments to ambitious EU defense projects, Europe is learning the hard lesson that survival in the 21st century requires more than strong walls, it demands a united fortress. After decades of fighting out-of-area conflicts, NATO is once again laser-focused on the defense of Europe itself. The 2022 Madrid summit marked a turning point, announcing a new force model that replaces the Cold War-era tripwire posture with real forward-deployed firepower. Under this model, over 300,000 troops will be at high readiness across Europe, with national units pre-assigned to specific defense plans in case of crisis. Part of this evolution includes a massive expansion of NATO's Enhanced Forward Presence, or EFP. What began in 2017 as 4 battle groups in the Baltic states and Poland is now growing both in size and scope. Additional multinational units are being stood up in Slovakia, Romania, Hungary, and Bulgaria, bringing heavy armor, air defense systems, and combat support units closer to Russia's doorstep. Behind the scenes, NATO's command structure is being retooled for speed. The creation of 2 new operational commands, Joint Force Command Norfolk, secures Atlantic supply lines, and Joint Support and Enabling Command streamlines logistics. These commands are aimed at preventing the alliance from being caught flat-footed. In short, NATO is no longer just talking deterrence, it's wiring itself to fight. Once mocked for its sluggish pace and political infighting, the EU has begun to act with surprising urgency. The European Defense Fund, EDF, now...
Yeah, and this is what we talked about before. It's just these 2 countries now, Poland, even Lithuania and Latvia, they're taking this very serious. But to the extent of Poland, I think some countries need to step up to that level. Spain and France, I don't think they're there yet. I think, to be honest, Spain and Greece is one of the weakest in the European Union, in my opinion. I really don't understand how Spain, such a great country, man. They just, I don't know, man. I just simply don't know. From an empire to this, they have some inside fighting with Catalonia and all that stuff, like some of the, whatever, man. I just don't get it. Sometimes I just don't get it, man. I don't know how Europe sometimes just get caught up in the small fights like this, you know? But they need to step it up. I mean, the European Union could be one of the greatest military experiment, you know, in the history of mankind, even greater than the United States. And if they lock in, if they focus, they could manage to just achieve that.
Coordinates billions in research and development spending across its member states. Meanwhile, Permanent Structured Cooperation, or PESCO, provides a framework for 60-plus multilateral defense projects, from maritime drones to cyber defense networks. At the strategic level, the EU's Strategic Compass, adopted in 2022, outlines a vision for a credible EU defense posture. It calls for the creation of a 5,000-strong rapid deployment force by 2025, which by and large it has created better crisis response tools and enhanced coordination with NATO. It's not an EU army, but it's something closer to an EU coherent security identity. Perhaps the most underrated initiative is military mobility. Funded jointly by the EU and NATO, this behind-the-scenes project is removing the bureaucratic and physical roadblocks that once hindered troop movements across Europe. All across Europe, bridges have been strengthened to carry tanks, rail gauges are being standardized, and customs processes digitized. Europe's long-standing dependence on U.S. military tech is slowly being rebalanced through joint programs designed to build cutting-edge systems at home. Leading the charge is the Future Combat Air System, or FCAS, a Franco-German-Spanish partnership to develop a sixth-generation fighter, drone swarms, and advanced sensors, all set to replace the Rafale and Eurofighter by 2040. Running in parallel, the Tempest project, led by the UK, Italy, and Japan, aims to produce a rival sixth-gen jet with similar capabilities. These aren't just prestige projects, they're about strategic independence. Europe's also investing heavily in its missile defense architecture. NATO's integrated air and missile defense is being expanded, while Germany's European Sky Shield initiative, launched in 2022, seeks to create a layered air defense network across the continent. With over 20 nations now signed on, it is one of the most ambitious air defense efforts in European history. Under the surface, European nations are boosting undersea warfare capabilities. The Nord Stream sabotage showed just how vulnerable seabed infrastructure can be. So NATO and the EU navies have ramped up investments in seabed surveillance, anti-submarine warfare, and unmanned underwater drones. This isn't just about guarding against Russian submarines, it's about protecting the digital arteries that keep Europe's economy alive. Tanks, jets, and battle groups might dominate the headlines, but wars aren't won by militaries alone. They're won by societies that can absorb a punch and keep on functioning. In Europe's emerging security doctrine, civil preparedness is no longer an afterthought. It's a pillar of deterrence. From food and fuel reserves to crisis communication plans, countries are waking up to the reality that resilience on the home front may just be as important as firepower on the front lines. Because in a modern conflict, your greatest vulnerability isn't always on the battlefield, it's in a blackout, the hospital queue, or the disinformation feed. First and foremost,
what do you do after things goes down, when currency doesn't really matter? What do you do after that? What is your plan B? You know what's crazy? When Maria, the hurricane, Maria went through Puerto Rico, the first thing I asked my father is, Dad, does currency matter? That was the third day, right? Does currency matter? You know what he told me? It doesn't. It does not matter. A currency, after a huge devastation like that, was bad. Currency, you cannot buy anything. So that at that moment, currency have no value. The only thing that mattered was resources. Physical resources. Physical. Like food, water.
Europe must prioritize its ability to keep the lights on. Europe's energy grid, once heavily dependent on Russian gas, is now being restructured for resilience. Countries are diversifying supply chains, building out liquefied natural gas terminals, and stockpiling fuel reserves. Norway has increased offshore patrols around its pipelines, and countries like Germany and the Netherlands are investing in decentralized, renewable-based power systems that are harder to sabotage. Communications security is another priority. Governments are securing their 5G infrastructure against foreign interference, protecting satellite networks, and building out redundancies for internet and radio services. The European Union's new Cyber Resilience Act mandates tougher security standards for everything, from routers to smart grids. Transportation networks, often overlooked, are now under scrutiny. Rail hubs, ports, and logistics corridors are being hardened, both against cyber and physical attacks. The EU's military mobility effort doubles as a public works project, ensuring that not just tanks, but food, medicine, and critical goods can move swiftly during a crisis. Across the continent, dusty civil defense manuals are being pulled off the shelves and rewritten for the age of hybrid war. Countries like Sweden and Finland are leading the way, reviving Cold War-era civil defense programs that treat every citizen as part of the national effort. Finland's famous bunkers, stocked with food and medical supplies, are matched by detailed plans for maintaining social services in wartime. Emergency response planning is being retooled to address the multi-domain threats, power outages combined with cyber attacks, mass refugee flows combined with disinformation, or even biothreats layered into conventional crises. Governments are running scenario-based drills involving not just the military, but hospitals, school, transportation agencies, and local governments. Behind the scenes, supply chain security has become a quiet obsession. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed how vulnerable Europe was to disruptions in medical supplies, semiconductors, and even basic pharmaceuticals.
It exposed the United States bigly, man. Hey, COVID-19 exposed us to not only how not prepared we were, but how incompetent our government was.
Now strategic stockpiles are being rebuilt, domestic production incentivized, and key imports diversified, especially in sectors like food, energy, and medical equipment. But no strategy works if the public is unprepared, and that's why public awareness is now a battlefield all its own. Crisis preparedness education is seeing a quiet resurgence. Sweden has mailed every household a Prepare for Crisis or War guidebook, covering everything from first aid to spotting misinformation. Other countries are launching school programs, public workshops, and emergency app campaigns to keep citizens informed and ready. One of the newest tools in the playbook is disinformation resistance training. Countries like Lithuania and Estonia have pioneered public campaigns that teach citizens how to verify sources, recognize bots, and identify coordinated influence operations. In an era where panic can be sparked by a single viral tweet, this kind of digital literacy is as crucial as any physical defense. Some governments are even revisiting national service models, not just military but civil. Germany is debating a return to mandatory service that could include roles in healthcare, logistics, or emergency response. France and Denmark are piloting volunteer corps that can be activated during national emergencies. The message is simple: national defense is no longer just the job of the military, it's everyone's responsibility. Hard power still matters, but future conflicts will be shaped by silicon as much as steel. To stay ahead, Europe isn't just preparing for war, it's investing in the technologies that could define it. AI, for one, is no longer science fiction. It's embedded in command systems, drone swarms, and battlefield simulations. European defense industries are scrambling to catch up with the US and Chinese advances, pouring resources into AI applications that range from predictive maintenance to real-time battlefield analytics. Initiatives like the EU's Coordinated Plan on AI and the European Defense Agency's AI
But you know what's crazy? We're behind as well? Construction. You know, when COVID-19 happened, I remember there was a video of, I think the Chinese were building a hospital in 1 week. Man, I saw that. Of course, the hospital was not perfect, but the fact that they even have the capability to do that, I mean, that means that they're training for war. Well, during war, you need to get it done. Whether it's good or bad, you need to get it done.
Plan aimed to consolidate research and fast-track military adoption. Countries like France and Germany are also funding national-level defense AI labs. And in the UK, the Ministry of Defense is pushing ahead with human-machine teaming trials involving swarms of autonomous drones alongside special forces. But Europe isn't racing ahead blindly. Ethical considerations play a major role, perhaps more so than with other global powers. The EU's forthcoming AI Act includes clauses that directly impact autonomous weapon systems, reinforcing the principle that humans must retain control over life or death decisions. This tension between innovation and restraint will shape how far and how fast European AI can be militarized. Space, once a peaceful frontier, is now a contested domain. European security officials understand that GPS signals, early warning systems, and encrypted communications all rely on satellites, and that those satellites are increasingly at risk. In response, Europe is investing in satellite constellation protection, building redundancy into communications networks, and deploying tech to detect and evade jamming or spoofing. France has already established a space command, and the European Space Agency is working with NATO to monitor space traffic and protect orbital assets. The growth of space situational awareness, essentially keeping track of what's flying above Earth, is another focus area. EU-funded programs are mapping orbital debris, tracking satellites, and monitoring potential threats. In 2022, Germany launched a new space surveillance radar system, while Italy and Spain are developing small satellite constellations designed to improve real-time observation. And Europe is thinking about counter-space capabilities too. These include everything from cyber tools targeting enemy satellites to co-orbital technologies that can inspect or disable rival systems without blowing them up.
Wow.
Quietly, Europe is preparing for a future where wars may begin with a blackout in orbit. Protecting critical infrastructure remains a top priority. Following attacks on hospitals, rail networks, and pipelines, countries are tightening regulations on cybersecurity for both public and private sectors. The EU's updated NIS2 directive mandates higher security standards across essential industries, from energy and transport to healthcare and water. Underlying all of this is a push for digital sovereignty. Europe aims to reduce reliance on foreign tech providers, especially from China and the US. Initiatives like Gaia X aim to create secure European-controlled cloud infrastructure. At the same time, defense ministries are funding indigenous cybersecurity startups and building secure communication systems that don't pass through foreign servers. Europe is more prepared for conflict today than at any point since the Cold War, but readiness remains uneven. Frontline states like Poland and Finland are racing ahead, while others lag in military investment or civil preparedness. Key gaps persist in air defense, joint logistics, and cyber resilience, and political fractures from defense spending disputes to divergent threat perceptions continue to complicate unity. Going forward, Europe must walk a fine line between credible deterrence and strategic dialogue. Strength deters aggression, but diplomacy still has a role in managing escalation and avoiding miscalculation. The challenge lies in staying firm without stumbling into the very war Europe hopes to prevent. History has shown that peace is rarely preserved by hope alone. In the 1930s, the warning signs were there, but too many chose to look away.
Yep.
Today, the signs are flashing once more.
For me, that was the big thing. A lot of countries, they decided to look away and not pay attention to what was going on. Even the UK, they were still celebrating the World War One. France were still celebrating World War One during the attack of Portland. Stupid, right?
Question is, will Europe act in time? Do you think Europe can defend itself without the US?
Of course.
Which country would take charge? Let us know.
Germany and Poland. I said it. Germany and Poland will take charge. Poland, because I think they want to show the world that they can manage it, that they can control this, and they have something to prove. And hopefully we don't have to even get to that point, because we don't want, of course, them to just go through something like that. But Germany and Poland, I think, are the ones that are going to move forward with this. I'm guarantee you that. Let me know what you guys think, guys. I will see you next one.